have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
Kenobi!
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Welcome, everyone, to the Star Wars Station Communication Podcast, Episode 5. Today we're going to be covering the Obi-Wan Kenobi comic book that came out on May the 4th. We have issue number 1. Colin and I both have issue number 1 in our hands, and we're ready to talk about this awesome entry into Obi-Wan's history from Christopher Cantwell. Colin, I know that you got the chance to read it. You've gotten to read it a couple times. What did you think of it overall before we jump into our kind of breakdown of it?
My first impression is that's a really good first start. It thrusts you into the action just like any fictional thing should do, but there's a good twist on it. It's not what you'd expect. I can't wait to talk more about it. It's really cool, I think. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think, the first thing you see is if you go to your local comic book store, pick this up off the shelf, is this gorgeous cover art by Phil Noto. It is really, really good. The cover art has very little to do with the story itself, but it's got, Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan, and Darth Vader on the sands of Tatooine. It's just a gorgeous cover.
Not only the cover, but the art throughout the whole thing is top-notch and phenomenal.
Yeah, Ario Anandito is a great artist. I think he did a top-notch job throughout this whole thing.
And how do they get... I wish I were an artist and understood how they're able to draw. I understand computers and rotoscoping on stuff, but drawing lightsabers on paper? Well, that sounds silly. But
No, this guy's great.
Cool.
And yeah, so you get the first... Even in the first page, you have a close-up of Alec Guinness Obi-Wan's face. On page 3, you have another look at that, and it's just like hyper detailed. The art is really good. I think the artist really captures Tatooine too. Like, how do you draw sand and make it look good and make it look detailed? But this guy can do it. He's able to do it, and it's really interesting that someone's able to do something like that. You can even see in this art the first shot of the Dune Sea has like red particles coming up from the sand that just makes it look so hot when you're reading it. And that also goes out to Carlos Lopez, who did the colors for this issue. But it's really, really impressive.
Yes, it is. And every page is like that. They, my goodness, they go to Coruscant later on, and there's a dream sequence that's very scary. It's, not enough good things to say about it, for sure.
Yeah, so it starts out Obi-Wan in the Dune Sea discussing a coming sandstorm, talking about how miserable his time on Tatooine has been, how he's so used to waiting. Really good. Like, it's just kind of... This takes place, obviously, at least the very beginning, takes place after the upcoming Obi-Wan Kenobi show. And it's, everything in this just really describes basically how miserable Obi-Wan has been on Tatooine and how miserable it is to live on Tatooine itself. How he's become an expert at detecting sandstorms just by watching his EOP and things like that. And just, you feel every time they address Obi-Wan on Tatooine, you just feel terrible for him. There's no way you can't feel bad for Obi-Wan.
Yeah, the sandstorm's coming in, and you can tell he's a long-term resident of this planet. And, of course, the Force is there, too, guiding him, I'm sure. Let him know, the winds and the this and the that. And he's, I equate it where we live, there's tornadoes and stuff. Every now and then we got to hunker down for worrying about our house blowing away. And so he's sitting down to weather the storm. He pulls out his journal, and that's kind of significant, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's his famous journal. We see this journal referenced multiple times in the Star Wars 2015 comic book. We've heard of Obi-Wan's journal. It's one of the guiding documents that helps Luke immediately after his death, is Luke goes and reads Obi-Wan's journal and learns a lot that he needs to know about it. It appears in Star Wars 2015, 7, 15, and 20. There's 3 stories about Obi-Wan that are straight out of his journal. And so knowing that Obi-Wan wrote this in a journal means that Luke Skywalker also read this story that we're reading, that Obi-Wan wrote down, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it is. Very cool. It's just, like I said, going back to the tornado thing, it kind of hits home for me. You know, I've sat around when I was a child, when I'm a middle-aged person, and just waiting for the storm to be over, you know, and all you can do is sit there and talk to your family by the candlelight. He's sitting by a lantern, so
Yeah.
not by a candle exactly, but I'm glad he had this journal. It's really cool to think about what else could be in there. I haven't read those other comics, so
Well, it's so rich.
search that out.
It's
too.
such a rich place for the Star Wars universe to go. Is that, you know, they have a wealth of Obi-Wan stories because they established this journal, and so it's just a really good way that they can always go back and tell a good classic Obi-Wan story from any point in his life. And that's what this comic does.
Tome of knowledge.
Exactly. You know, like you said, you get to sit around when there's tornadoes, when there's thunderstorms, and talk with your family. That's one thing Obi-Wan doesn't get to do, and we get to see in some of these panels is he talks about how alone he is. The cold shiver of loneliness is how he puts it. And he remembers the solitary shiver. And that's exactly what launches us into him talking about his loneliness on Tatooine, into the meat of the story. This first story, each one of these is going to take place at a different point. Each issue is going to take place at a different point in Obi-Wan's life. And so the first issue takes place with Obi-Wan as a youngling, and he starts awake, gasps, and he feels lonely, and he's shivering in the middle of the night. And this is where we open up. The Jedi Temple many years ago is what it says.
Yeah, and so he's looking for his friend Garen, who's supposed to be asleep. You know, they're sleeping in a bunkhouse, it looks like, which is what you expect at some fancy boarding school type place. And his friend Garen is out there contemplating a dream, a nightmare that she's had.
Yeah, which is, we have had a long tradition of nightmare interpretation, dream interpretation, vision interpretation in Star Wars, all the way back to Empire Strikes Back when Luke is interpreting that he can sense that his friends are in trouble. And then we have all of the vivid scenes that Anakin has of the nightmares, of Shmi dying, of Padme dying. And this is just like so clearly in your face, an Anakin parallel, the dreams that his friend is suffering from.
That was going to be me, like, you know, an echo back through time, or something, prescience of the future. And that's exactly what struck me, was that, you know, here's Anakin on the lava shores of Mustafar screaming up at Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure, I'd bet money that's what she's exactly feeling. That's exactly what this is a panel of a burned Anakin screaming up at Obi-Wan.
Yeah, so we jump right into the story. Garen's sitting on top of the Jedi Temple. She's saying she's still having nightmares. She's obviously talked to Obi-Wan about these, and she's saying, she's terrified of that something's going to happen to her father, whom she's never met, because, the Jedi are taken as younglings. This, Anakin's the oldest Jedi to be taken in, generations of time. And so she has no actual memory of her father, but that doesn't stop Force users. Leia had never even met Padme, but she had memories and imprints on her mind of Padme. And it's the same thing for this Garen character. She feels a strong connection to her father.
So far, in just these few panels, I really like this Garen character, especially as the story develops. Because, we could be wrong. This might not be some Anakin thing. Everything doesn't have to be centered around him. And so, you can tell this person's highly attuned to the Force and could be a fantastic Jedi.
Yeah.
And a good friend for Obi-Wan. So what are the implications here that we find out in the next few panels? The point being, page to page, you're like, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, it's really, the whole story really keeps you on your edge. You have to do that with comic books, and so it's good. They do a really good thing. And so we see Garen and Obi-Wan discussing how Garen needs to leave. She says, I can't do this. I have to go find my father. I have to save him. Obi-Wan immediately, you can't do that. Come on. The gathering is happening. We've seen the gathering in the Clone Wars. It's the giant moment for the younglings when they get to construct their lightsabers. He says they're leaving for the gathering soon. And so there's no way she can leave. But she has this giant sense of duty, this need to go help her father, the same way that Anakin must have felt to go help Shmi. And so she feels like she has to go. And this is the first setup for Obi-Wan even experiencing something like this, and like another Jedi's pain and another Jedi's emotions, and him having to learn how to deal with that. This story is obviously a huge teaching moment for Obi-Wan.
Right. And lots of parallels, exactly like you said, a calling. makes you wonder how many other Jedi have faced similar trials and tribulations. So, I mean, the Jedi Order's been around for how long? This has to be something that they almost secretly condone or allow to influence and shape how Jedi learn lessons and things. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. We see Obi-Wan talk about how she's his only friend, and that the Kaibuk clan, the clan that they're in, needs them. And this is a new clan. We haven't gotten to hear about the Kaibuk clan yet. There's a few youngling clans. There's a brand new one. The Kaibuk only mentioned in the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary, and so they're already tying it in, and they're just making the universe deeper and more interconnected always. And so that's the kind of things you have to look for when you're reading Star Wars. Is just these little bitty throwaway lines that connect to something wholly different on the in a totally different piece of media. But Obi-Wan's talking to her, and he's like, "You're my only friend," and she's like, "The clan loves you." So I want to know what your interpretation is on this interaction, because you could take it as, Obi-Wan is actually disliked, and there's a path to talk about there with some other parallels, or that Obi-Wan has some self-confidence issues at this age, and that people do like him, and he just doesn't understand that. He just can't, he has a little bit of imposter syndrome or something like that when he's talking about this. So I'd like to know which of those perspectives, or a different perspective, you think it might be for him.
Gosh, that's kind of heavy. I'm not real sure. Man, given that, especially what we see of Obi-Wan later in life, I mean, he's got to be charismatic because he sits on the council, right? So I maybe he gained that from doing all these. Like, I was going to remark how she has boots on, and he jumps off to follow her here in a few more pounds with no shoes on.
Oh, wow. I didn't even notice that. That's a good catch. That's a really good catch.
So there's some inbuilt bravery into Obi-Wan that has to be is an uncommon trait in Jedi. And building off what you said moments ago, I think that it's little things like this that yeah, exactly. He's not going to be boastful about. He'll be more humble about it because it's Obi-Wan, but other people are observant of these things. It's kind of like a subconscious understanding of who a person is, just based on their actions. And so, I think the clan likes him just fine, whether he's aware of that or not. He's too humble to know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I like that interpretation. And I think that is where it's going here, is that Obi-Wan, just has these he has these issues he doesn't understand, and she's convincing him. But I think the other part is worth speaking about only because of the parallels it draws between Obi-Wan and Anakin's time as a youngling. Because if Obi-Wan is disliked as a youngling, we know that Anakin is disliked as a youngling. I can't remember the source for this, but it's pretty well documented that Anakin's time as a youngling, especially in Legends, is just full of the other younglings, just hating him, disliking him, not liking him. The other Padawans don't like him because he's the chosen one. He's pretty adept. He learns things very quickly. But there's well documented times of them making fun of him for being a slave, making fun of him for being the chosen one, things like that. Kind of getting bullied for that. And so, if that's the case for Obi-Wan, there's a clear parallel there, and they can kind of understand that same struggle together. But I think that your first instinct is right, that it's not Obi-Wan is actually disliked. It's just that he's too humble. He doesn't understand that he's actually well-liked among the clan. But there's more discussion of this at the very end of the book, or at the very end of the comic book, that doesn't shed more light on it, but adds another layer of depth to that.
Right. And just to build on what you said, Anakin is probably an arrogant character. I haven't read like you have on this when he was a youngling exactly, but you can see Obi-Wan is about his friends. He's about doing the right thing and taking risks. But that's all Jedi, though. It's taking risks that you normally wouldn't take for people that you care about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I said, he's jumping off this tower with no shoes on. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
Hold on,
it's a far drop.
Well, who knows what's of this underbelly of Coruscant is. You go broken glass everywhere, trash.
Yeah.
It can't be a sanitary place.
Yeah, you're right.
He don't care though.
I think in these same panels, if, like you mentioned, this Coruscant going down to the underlevels, if Tatooine is the most fleshed out on screen, Coruscant is by far the most fleshed out place in written media, and a lot in the animated shows, because we spend so much time in Coruscant, and Obi-Wan, the descriptions, Obi-Wan's inner monologue, the page writings of the journal, they talk about the city is Coruscant is a city planet of layers, level upon level, almost never ending, a metropolitan abyss. And it's just these vivid descriptions of Coruscant that we've seen, that we know. But, in the movies, we only get good Coruscant. You only get bad Coruscant in the Clone Wars and in like written media. And so it's, we still get to see just more aspects of the terrible parts of Coruscant. And this comic takes completely place here. It all takes place here.
Yeah, and think of any city. There's always really good parts. There's always bad parts that are overhyped for, you think they're bad, but they're really not. But then there's forgotten places that people just don't even remember they exist any longer, and that's where they go in this comic book.
You're right. So in the exact same panel where he's not wearing shoes is what I think may be the best line in the comic book. And it is a inner monologue excerpt where it says, "But I did it for a good friend." And good friend is thicker penciled. It's obviously bolded and highlighted for a reason, because this is a direct callback to Obi-Wan's line in A New Hope, where he says, he's talking to Luke about Anakin, and he says, your father was a cunning warrior. He pauses, and he says, and he was a good friend. And this exact moment in Obi-Wan's life shows us a great highlight about how much he values friendship, how important friendship is to Obi-Wan. We see that throughout his and Anakin's relationship, but we know that is something important to him from the very outset of his just young life, is that he values friendship above anything, because he's a straight arrow kind of guy. You can already tell he's trying to convince his friend not to leave, but he is willing to jump off the Jedi Temple and break the rules because he has a good friend.
Right, exactly. It's like, we have to follow the rules, we have to follow the rules. Nope, I'm not going to follow the rules. There's always instances where stepping outside the boundary is what you have to do, is the right thing, because the boundaries are too much of a limitation to save your friend, to really do what's right even for the Jedi Order, because he's willing to risk everything to make sure that the Jedi Order has Garen to be great. He can see his potential and all this stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that another interesting part is, and I want to know, I read Master and Apprentice recently, and this is about Obi-Wan's time as a Padawan with Qui-Gon Jinn. And so we get a lot. We're going to get a comic. The comic right after this is also about his time as a Padawan with Qui-Gon Jinn. And so I'm interested to know, in Master and Apprentice, they talk about Obi-Wan's time on Pygel and how he came to be Jinn's apprentice, and how he was Jinn's Padawan because Qui-Gon Jinn was so unorthodox. And they talk about how Obi-Wan was very unorthodox as a youngling, but then he develops into this very rigid, rule-following character as a Padawan. But this comic shows us that he was very rigid and rule-following as a youngling. And so what I want to know is where this kind of change happens, where this interpretation of him comes from. Star Wars has the inconsistent narrator syndrome. That's not a bad thing. It's usually for the better. Where, for instance, the short story books that they have, from a certain point of view, these are all canon in quotes, because some things can be misremembered or some things can be overwritten. There's a few things in these books that can contradict, but very small contradictions. And so there's the inconsistent narrator bias, and they always attribute that as the Wills recording these stories. And so this could be inconsistent narrator bias because Obi-Wan is writing this journal himself. So there could be an inconsistent narrator. But it's interesting. I want to know what the interpretation of Obi-Wan is here in relation to these two pieces of media and how they work together and conflict. because I'm sure Christopher Cantwell researched really well, because we know that for the Obi-Wan series, people read the Master and Apprentice book. We know for a fact Mike Chin, writing Brotherhood, got a ton of inspiration from Master and Apprentice. It's one of Claudia Gray's best pieces of Star Wars literature. I think everyone should pick it up, but it's very interesting. I wonder if Christopher Cantwell read this or what his interpretation was of that.
Yeah, surely he did. I mean, it's like we said moments ago, Obi-Wan's a hardline rule follower up until his friend is jumping off a building, and he has to jump right off too. And, I mean, he even develops into that. I mean, aren't they going to... Yeah, he wants to leave the whole Jedi Order to follow his friend, and that's rule breaking to a T. He's willing to throw it all away to make sure that she's safe.
That's true.
So maybe he faces some consequences after this that challenge his point of view, that reinforce. Well, I should have followed the rules. We don't know yet. That's what this comic book is for. Maybe we'll get to build something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, his time with Qui-Gon Jinn, I think, takes place before Pygel. I'm not positive. We don't actually know that, but I'll bet that is the case. So anyway, we move on. Obi-Wan tries to find his friend, and he gets jumped by this gang of assorted aliens. A Rodian, a Trandoshan, and a couple others. And this is where we get to see Obi-Wan's first fight of his life, really. Actually, no, it is his first fight outside of the temple. He says as much. And so we get to see Obi-Wan take on a couple of bad guys as a youngling, and it's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive how he handles it.
Yeah, it's really incredible how a youngling Jedi can handle multiple grown adults without a lightsaber, with only his basic knowledge of the Force, and he manhandles them like they're just not even theirs.
Yeah.
I mean, one of them has a sword. I would be able to stand, even if I had this training, that would be quite intimidating to stand against anybody like this.
Yeah, it's 4 people, and he uses a Jedi mind trick on one, and at this age, super impressive. Then he force pushes one, knocks 2 of them together. I mean, it's just really, and then the 4th one gets the best of him. But he takes on 3 people as a youngling. It's really, really impressive work.
If I came across a Jedi youngling, I'm like, yeah, do what you want.
Yeah, I'm not going to mess with him. I'm not going to mess with him. These folks certainly.
Especially after he watches my friends get dunked like that. I'm not messing with him.
Right, exactly. And then, his friend immediately comes in, and she comes to the rescue. She bashes in one of their skulls, lands on him, kicks it in the back of the head. And then, it's called to stop. This Zabrak female emerges from the shadows and says, you need to stop, or her gang, she's in charge of these guys. She says, stop messing with these kids. And, the story continues on from there. And it's this introduction of this character, this bad guy. This is definitely the first time we've seen her. But I'm interested to see how they kind of came about with just some random underworld folks being in there. Because it's always good when they just add new layers of underworld characters into this kind of thing.
Yeah. The bad guys are obviously just cannon fodder, but she has, they've drawn her a little bit better. Her emergence is pretty striking. It's really cool. She's a quintessential bad guy who has no morals and no qualms about screwing people over. Another thing we see that's cool is the Garen character pays for her service in something we've never seen. Out in Silver. It's the EADUN is how you spell it. I'm not quite sure how to say it, but it's I think it's a cool little MacGuffin thing to maybe see more of in the future. But yeah, she's a bad guy. I think she's really cool. I hope we get to see more of her.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We like you said, we get the Yavin Silver, or however you say it, and Nodris K, her this character, she knows how valuable it is, and we see that she's tied to Black Sun. So there's a reason that they have all this. They're this gang, and they're working for people, and it all goes up to the top. It's always all the Star Wars underworld activities are all connected to those few clans and gangs and stuff. So it's a good mention to continue to kind of flesh that out too, because canon's young again. I mean, we haven't even had this canon for a decade yet. And so there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be fleshed out. So anytime they're able to tie this stuff together is really good.
And the underworld is really cool. I really like the little bitty things like the out in silver. As long as the bad guys are, I understand there's only a few pages to see in this one, but she's got a gang. It's a female. I'm not going to shy away from liking a quintessential strong female. Ellen Ripley is one of my favorite characters in fiction of all time. I know it's kind of saying much for a 2-page thing, but they get my hopes up,
Sure, absolutely.
It really does. And seeing a Zabrak female is really cool. There's not many of these in current.
Yeah, you're right. They're few and far between. So, then they capture the Jedi youngling. She says, now that I know you're Jedi, I've seen your powerful abilities. She just thought that Garen was some random kid. Obi-Wan kind of got him found out. And she says, I'm no longer going to take this necklace as payment. I'm just going to take this necklace, and then she captures them, she cuffs them, and she says, having 2 Jedi younglings in her service is going to be a really good thing for their gang. It's going to be really useful for them, which is totally true.
Right. Could you imagine? Because she tortured him into submission. And if you had a Jedi that you could have any modicum of loyalty to you, just have him do. She knows that he could do mind tricks. It's like you just stand by the ATM and have everybody get their credits out.
Yeah, that
sounds dumb, but I'm sure they have more ambitious plans than that. But I'm not a criminal. I don't know anything about doing stuff like this.
Right. No, you're right. There's the sky's the limit with this. We have instances in canon where this stuff has happened, like when Anakin basically becomes re-enslaved by the Zygarian slavers, and the Zygarian queen has him as his bodyguard. And this is full-grown Anakin, so obviously these 2 younglings could totally get captured by these thugs and be enslaved. And so,
right.
Slavery is rampant in the Star Wars universe, and this is capturing a Jedi is not something that they're too afraid of. They should be, because in the next few panels we see them immediately bust free, and then hightail it out of there. But it's an interesting concept that we see a lot in Star Wars, but that I haven't gotten tired of yet.
Yeah, and they got the typical plot armor. Blasters can't hit them, or is it plot armor, or nobody knows how to shoot anything in the Star Wars universe?
Right. Well, they say there's a study online that I've seen that stormtroopers in the original 3 movies are actually more accurate than the United States Marine Corps.
Oh, give me a break.
That's what it says. And so,
yeah, I think the Marine Corps has been existing longer than the Empire was. So.
But yeah, you're right. They have the plot armor. They jump out of there though, and that's kind of this is the climax of the action. And then you have another important interaction between Obi-Wan and Garen. And Obi-Wan's, all right, let's get back to the temple. This didn't work. And Garen says, no, I can't. I've got to go. I've got to leave. And Obi-Wan lets her go. Reading each panel, I didn't know it was going to happen. I didn't know if they were going to if she was going to get let go by Obi-Wan or not. But he does. He lets her go.
Well, common sense. You run into your first foray into, you spent your family's entire generational wealth to go on your life quest, or for lack of a better term, and your first foray into this, you get slapped around by some gangsters. That would scare me, especially if I had a warm bed with about life, a very comfortable life waiting for me. You think anybody would turn away from that? Right? Well, I think I'll figure this out. So that speaks to how strong the motivations are that Jedis could face. This pull to go on this whatever quest that pulls them. Garen's quest here, Anakin's quest to go save his mom. That gives more perspective on that. It gives more weight. I mean, if you read all this stuff, you understand. But it gives more weight to what Anakin felt. I mean, because it's not just a one-off that's in a movie we saw however long. Here it is again in these pages. A dream pulling these Jedi to go do a thing.
Right.
And this is a huge trial, too, because it seems to me that these pulls are the Force testing the Jedi into a temptation. And could be that Anakin failed. He slaughtered all the Sand People and rescued his mom. He didn't have to do that. He could have just rescued his mom, and probably the same thing would have happened. her dying, and who knows how. But if he didn't slaughter those sand people, that's the temptation that he failed. And so, like this Garen character, what temptation is she going to face?
Absolutely. And, you got to think, maybe her dreams are even more vivid than Anakin's, or she has some interesting sense. I would venture to say there has to be something there, because this is basically a stranger to her. Like, it is her father, but she's never met him. There's no way she could have met him because of the age she had to have been taken. Or she's met him, but she has to have no vivid memories of this person because the age that Jedi are taken from their families. And so Anakin knew his mother. Anakin's, explanation is pretty simple and clear, that he was taken at an age where he obviously remembers his mother and obviously has an emotional connection to her. This Garen character...
And that's why they take him so young.
Exactly. That is why they take him so young. But this Garen character still selflessly goes after what is essentially a stranger. And so she's a really good character.
With no resources.
Exactly. We may never see this character again. We might see her again. We don't know. There's nothing that implies we're going to see her again. But even in just this one issue, you really get she is a good, just Jedi archetype. She's a great vessel for telling an important story and an important perspective of a struggle that Jedi face.
And something that shaped Obi-Wan's core memories that would guide him for the rest of his life.
Yeah, absolutely. So next, Garen says she's going to leave, and Obi-Wan in his inner monologue says, "Using the stars as my guide, I returned to the Jedi Temple alone that night." Alone is again emphasized. It's important. The whole theme of this is how alone Obi-Wan felt even at this age, and how obviously alone he feels on Tatooine, and the importance of aloneness to him, the importance of the interpretation of this, state of being to him. And it also talks about using the stars as his guide. This is the second time this is referenced. And, Jedi have individual powers sometimes, or they have heightened abilities in certain areas. Like Mace Windu has an ability to detect shatter points in things. So, like in gems in the Legends continuity, he was able to find where their weakest points were, or rocks. And in canon continuity, he shatters a window just by putting his palm to it and finding its shatter points. That's his special ability. And this just kind of implies that Obi-Wan has this sense of direction and sense of where these stars are. But I think the sense of direction that they're talking about on Coruscant is obviously an allegory for his moral compass and his actual sense of direction for his life and his self. Because Obi-Wan is, people talk about it all the time. Obi-Wan is the pure good character in Star Wars. He's the selfless guy. He is the embodiment of the good, the light, and what Jedi should be. And I think the stars stuff is an allegory for it. And I really hope that Christopher Cantwell keeps this thread moving throughout the comic book.
Right. It's so good to see these small little two or three word callbacks to previous media that are just so impactful,
It is important. So we get to the last page. He gets to the Jedi Temple, and he comes up to Yoda. Yoda's waiting on the steps. Yoda says, "She's gone." And so Yoda knew the whole time, like he always does. They talk about in the Clone Wars and in Master and Apprentice, and I'm sure in a few other medias, that Yoda is not clairvoyant. He can't see the perfect future, but that what Yoda can see of the future is usually very clear. And so this shows that again, that even in this small instance, a Jedi youngling, that Yoda knows what's happening and has the best lookout for her. And so that, or is, looking out for her. Maybe not the best. I'm sure Yoda disagrees that this is what's best for her, but he cares, and he's getting visions of something that's happening to some just basically random youngling. And that's really good for Yoda. I mean, that's a really good build on Yoda.
Yes, it is. And, he's not sending cops out. He's the mom waiting up for, he knew they were gone. He knew that it was just him coming back. You think how old Yoda is just in this one? How old is he?
He's 800. He's 800 something. He's 800 because we don't have an exact year for this. This has to be, Obi-Wan's probably 9 years old in this. Obi-Wan was born in 58 BBY. Yoda dies at 900, so Yoda's probably about 850. No, about 840 something. 840 something would be my guess.
So think how many times he's seen this over the decades and hundreds centuries, And this is probably old news to him of a Padawan, or I'm sorry, a youngling being pulled to something, or even Padawans, or even Jedi being pulled to go do these things and sneaking out. It's got to be just like some sort of like Hogwarts thing, where he just is the caretaker of these younglings and is shepherding to where they need to go when they sneak out at night, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like we see in Attack of the Clones, Yoda, almost every Jedi has been trained by Yoda, because he's the guy who trains the younglings. That's his thing, is he's been around for so long, and he takes the care in nurturing these Jedi at the earliest stages of their life. And so that's really good. And
Extreme
so
wisdom.
he has such a connection to every Jedi, but especially these younglings. And that is shown Yoda's in 3 panels of this comic book. And it's just, this comic book fleshes him out more. Christopher Cantwell did a superb job at this. He has Yoda on these 3 panels, give Obi-Wan a broom and say, you're going to think about this lesson. While this wisdom is still new to you, you're going to think about this. And then he starts having Obi-Wan sweep.
And we're back to the journey after that. One page in this whole book is such a good thing. You get the Yoda speak in this too, and you can hear his voice in your head as you read it, And while this wisdom is still new to you, exactly like you said, stay up and read this always.
Right.
Quite the lesson.
Yeah, it's like every page of this comic book is pretty rich, and it's nice because not every piece of Star Wars media is a ringer. There's a few that haven't been, but this one is, every page of this is good. It builds on characters. And then the very last line, Obi-Wan's inner monologue, it's a journal entry. It says, "Just as I hope to continue holding back my own of what is to come." And his own, he's referring to fear. Because he's talking about Garen's fear right before that. And so this is, Obi-Wan's old in this. You have to assume that he's writing this journal entry in like 2 BBY, 1 BBY. He knows that soon is when he's going to be called. He thinks that, Luke is coming of age and something's happening soon. The Empire's growing in power even more, and that this entry, I think that's what this fear has got to be referencing. I will bet you around issue 5 story is going to lead almost immediately into him going to the Judlin Wastes and finding Luke attacked by the Tusken Raiders.
Right, and that theme of knowing that something is coming, being able to sense bad karma, for lack of a better term, is a recurrent theme in the Star Wars universe. Not just when bad things happen, like Alderaan blowing up. It's the foreboding sense of dread that is that Jedi are going to be more attuned to because of their Force awareness.
Yeah. It's a really good comic. I can't wait for number 2. Number 2 is going to come out, and it's going to be Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Padawan time, where it is time with him. There's like we get a preview of the cover. There's like a werewolf behind them in the cover, and I'm not sure what at all this could be referencing, but it's, just the cover has me hooked.
Right. How many issues of this?
5. There will be 5. So what I imagine will be the case is we got Youngling issue, we'll get Padawan issue, we'll get an issue between the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, we'll get an issue set during the Clone Wars, and we'll get an issue set during his time on Tatooine, would be my guess.
And then surely this is going to coincide with the TV show in a sense, because this will be 5 months coming out, and we'll have finished the TV show. Maybe there's something in here, they want to tie into the TV show that would be a spoiler that we'll get to see somehow. Like some interaction with...
Well, I bet that, like we've talked about over multiple episodes now, that May is the month of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, it's clearly like they're just putting out so much stuff. They put out the comic book. They put out the Brotherhood novel. They're putting out the TV show. Like, everything this May is about Obi-Wan. And so I would bet that they gave Mike Chin, Christopher Cantwell, like, at least inside baseball knowledge about the show so that they could write more effective stories. Because that's what they want for these stories, is for you to pick these up and for you to get a really good sense of who Obi-Wan Kenobi is before his TV show.
Right, and these characters are beloved. They don't want to do something that taints the audience. So the character changes it drastically. That's going to lead to some sort of
Right.
battle.
You know, the story group has been much derided. People say that they're ineffective. People say that they've made the same canon mistakes that Legends has made. And these are fine arguments. I'm no defender of the story group. I think that they totally could have done better. But I think one of their best things is being able to coordinate media like this and being able to say, we're going to have this character, stuff about this character come out. We want this stuff to start pumping out. Because if I'm not mistaken, the War of the Bounty Hunters comic book came out the same time that the Book of Boba Fett did. I haven't read the War of the Bounty Hunters comic book yet, but I know that it's set between when Boba Fett picks Han up in Cloud City and takes him to Jabba the Hutt. The whole context is that. And so it has to flesh Boba Fett out a lot. And I bet that if you read that comic book, that you liked the Book of Boba Fett better. That would be my guess, at least. Not that, I like the Book of Boba Fett just fine, but I bet I would have had even more context had I read that book.
Right, and these comic books are such a great wealth of knowledge for the inside baseball, like you said, like the Out in Silver, like we talked about. Like these little one-off gangsters that we don't get to see that have some cool aspect to them. And the little one-use Jedi that are impactful to their individual stories. And, when you're sitting around you're standing loud when you see Ray Park, or whenever the next Star Wars movie comes out, it's the congregation of the fans, and you're getting, you remember in the Obi-Wan Comic this, you remember in this book that, and it's such a fun conversation to have with like-minded fans. And when you pick up things like this and read them, it adds to that value.
Yeah, I totally agree. This was a good read. I would recommend anyone go pick it up. You got a month until number 2 comes out. When number 2 comes out, we'll definitely at least mention it. We'll be in the heat of the Obi-Wan series, so we might not give an as in-depth of a dive in. We might let a couple build up, and then when the Obi-Wan series is done, kind of give you guys all of them at once and a review of the series itself. But I would say go pick up number 1, read it. And if you do, I think that you're really going to be looking forward to number 2 coming out in June.
Or scroll back to this podcast. You'll be able to listen to this in the future. It'll always be available. You can.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So next we're going to roll right into the Holonet news segment. Big Star Wars news week. I mean, this is this is a big week. It's almost, or it's not almost as big as Celebration. We're absolutely going to have way too much to talk about when Celebration comes out. The same weekend as Obi-Wan comes out. And so we might have to do a special Celebration episode or something like that just to cover everything. But there's a lot of news this week, and most of it is surrounding novels. But we do have some TV show news too. But the first thing we're going to jump into, because I'm so excited about this, is we're going to hop right into talking about the Brotherhood novel that came out yesterday, May 10th. The Brotherhood novel by Mike Chen released. The novel's set right after Attack of the Clones, and it tells the very earliest story of the Clone Wars. It tells just right after the Battle of Geonosis what Obi-Wan and Anakin are doing. And Colin, I'm 5 chapters into this book, but it is amazing. It's really, really good. And so far, it's just Mike Chen absolutely gets these guys. He gets Anakin and Obi-Wan to a T.
Yeah, because, I spent a lot of time watching Attack of the Clones. I understand a lot of people don't like it, but it's one of my favorite movies just because I spent a lot of time
well, your story about why you watched it is how you watched it so much. You just watched it on repeat all the time is really funny.
You want me to tell that? I can. I just, a little blurb. So I got deployed to Iraq. I'm United States Marine. I was deployed. I was in Iraq. I brought a laptop with me and a whole sling of DVDs. I watched several of them, but Star Wars has always been a huge favorite of mine. And Revenge of the Sith wasn't out, so I got to watch Attack of the Clones repeatedly. So there's so much of that stuck in my head. Padme is one of my favorite characters too. She does quite a lot of good in that movie. He pursues her at the very end. I think that's really cool. And they get married at the very, very end with his bionic arm. So gosh, this has me pumped thinking about because they're newlyweds in this book.
Freshly married. There's a great chapter. It's chapter 4 that is it's chock full of the best interactions of Anakin and Padme that I've seen since the Clone Wars show.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's good.
That's
So,
I like that way.
the first chapter, we launch into a character we've never met before. So each chapter is told from the perspective of a certain character. The first chapter is told from the perspective, it's not the first chapter, it's the prologue, is told from the perspective of a Nemoidian guard, or royal guard on Cato Nemoidia. And there's a bombing on Cato Nemoidia. This is immediately after the Clone Wars. This is where the Trade Federation is headquartered. Newt Gunray's from here. Senator Lot Dodd is from here. But the line is that Newt Gunray is an extremist. They hold this line throughout the Clone Wars, and that the Nemoidians, the Cato Nemoidians, or the Nemoidians and Cato Nemoidia are neutral. They're neutral systems in the war because the Trade Federation doesn't want to pick sides. They obviously pick sides, and as the war progresses, it's clear that the Trade Federation is aiding the Separatists. But there's no proof. There's whole arcs in the Clone Wars about this in the show. But the first perspective is about this bombing on Cato Nemoidia. And the run-of-the-mill Nemoidian generally has no idea who to blame. They say, we don't know if this is the Republic. We don't know if this is the Separatists. Like, who is this? And so the start of the book is, how is this happening? When it first happens, you already gotta think it's obviously some kind of Sidious machination. But you actually have no idea who really perpetrated the bombing, at least which side perpetrated the bombing. And so it's just an immediate hook right out the gate. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that does sound cool. You don't have generally, I don't have a very high opinion of him because how big of a doofus Newt Gunray was, just doing whatever Sidious and
there's actually, it's just in the first few chapters, Anakin makes a comment about Nemoidians in general, like as a species, and then Dex from Dex's Diner also makes a comment about them. And so Nemoidians are widely derided in the universe, apparently, at least by basilisks and humans. They do not think very highly of them. They think they're cowardly, is basically the gist of it. And so I think that's very interesting that kind of held up from the interpretation of them through the Phantom Menace. It's like every alien has these interpretation stereotypes in the galaxy, like Gungans. Everyone thinks Gungans talk funny and are a little slow or whatever. We saw that in the last Shot book. And so it's the same thing. The Nemoidians have a thing about them that is mentioned multiple times in this book.
A stereotype or a not positive.
Yeah,
generality.
exactly. So chapter 2 opens up. We have Anakin's knighting. He's being knighted outside the Jedi Temple. He and a bunch of other former Padawans are basically being emergency knighted so that they can be generals in the Clone War. And so, not that they didn't achieve it. Anakin definitely achieved it. He fought a Sith Lord, and that's one of the criteria for becoming a knight. That's how Obi-Wan got knighted, was he defeated Darth Maul, and that's why Obi-Wan got immediately knighted. And so we see this. It's Anakin Skywalker's knighting. Mace Windu is delivering a speech. One of the long pages talks about how much Mace Windu doesn't like him, which I thought was a very interesting direction for them to go in. I'm happy that they did. But it talks about, and this is at least from Anakin's perspective, he's like, Mace Windu does not like me. He thinks I don't belong here. I was too old to come here in the first place. And you can just tell. And that's, that comes through all their interactions. In the movies, that Mace Windu just is really cold to Anakin. He's cold to everybody, but he's the coldest to Anakin. And so it's kind of nice for them to just come out and say it. Mace Windu does not like him.
Yeah, I can't wait to read that. I got the audiobook. I'm going to start listening to that. I wonder if they're going to do like the other book and a different narrator reads a different.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll be interested to know because I picked this one up and I'm reading it physically. This one is, and I'm happy that I did. So Anakin's knighting corresponds with Obi-Wan being a master on the Jedi Council. This is only weeks after Geonosis, and that says they're rotating through masters who are on Coruscant to be on the Council, and this is Obi-Wan in his rotation. So what is being set up in this book is whatever happens in this book, Obi-Wan earns his permanent spot on the Council with. And so we don't know exactly what happens yet, but it is interesting. So the knighting ceremony is interrupted by a holographic Chancellor Palpatine who informs the Jedi Council of this bombing on Cato Nemoidia. And then Chancellor Palpatine is interrupted by a holonet of Dooku speaking to the galaxy writ large that says, the Separatists didn't do this, but we're not going to accuse the Republic of doing this. We want the Republic to come out and say they didn't do it, and we want Chancellor Palpatine to come himself to Cato Nemoidia. And so immediately it's like, oh, our war enemies are goading us to go to this neutral site. Obviously, this is a Sidious machination. He's having Dooku say this. Sidious wants to go to Cato Nemoidia for some reason. Obi-Wan immediately, the hairs stick up on the back of his neck, and he says, "No, we can't let this happen. It's too dangerous for you, Chancellor. We need to send a Jedi." The Chancellor is like, "I've got to go as soon as possible, but it's going to take a day to get stuff ready. So Obi-Wan, if you can convince the Cato Neimoidians to let a singular Jedi go, then we'll let that happen, but only if you can convince the Cato Neimoidians." So it's not clear if this was Sidious's plan all along, or if this is a little bit of a wrench, and he just doesn't think the Neimoidians are going to be convinced. But it's really interesting. I think we're going to get some really good Sidious interaction in this book too, which is always great. Always good to see more of his motivations, background, just all of that building up his overtaking of the galaxy.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Interesting to see if he goes or what.
Yeah, so one of the things in Anakin's knighting that sticks out really well is he talks about he's feeling anxious, and then he all of a sudden his thoughts are drawn to Qui-Gon Jinn, and he calms down. He's like, it's like Qui-Gon is there with me right now. Anakin doesn't get it. Anakin doesn't understand. Cool. But obviously Qui-Gon is actually there with him, because Qui-Gon learned at least a little bit how to communicate through the Force and become a Force ghost. So this is it's just really subtle that Qui-Gon is looking over Anakin this whole time. Just you hear that, "Anakin, stop," when he's slaughtering the Tusken Raiders. It's that same thing. It's really, really interesting. It's super cool. Yeah, and then, so just through the next couple chapters, we see Obi-Wan sees Anakin and Padme kind of interacting in marital bliss. This is obviously kind of a bad thing. He doesn't understand. He doesn't know they're married. He just sees them being warm to each other. And he says, just a couple weeks ago when we were her bodyguards, she was kind of cold to Anakin. So what has changed here? What's happened? And he sees this from afar. And then we get a whole chapter of Anakin and Padme on a date in the underworld of Coruscant where no one will recognize them. And this is just awesome. It's great. This is basically their honeymoon. They only had the little honeymoon on Naboo after they were married. But this is really good one-on-one. You can tell how much they love each other. It's just this passionate love. And it's Anakin getting to show his true self to Padme. And it's a really, really good chapter. I cannot understate how romantic it is, how much they understand the push and pull of the war already on them. And they're just a few weeks in. And how it's just already they understand that their marriage is abnormal because he's a Jedi and she's a senator, and even more abnormal because of the duties of war. But how they are perfect complements to each other through her measured compassion for people and Anakin's fiery passion to see the galaxy changed for the better. Yeah, it's really, really good. And so the last chapter I just read, chapter 5, Obi-Wan is on the hunt for information, so he goes to Dex's diner. We get to see a lot of Dex. I think Dex is great characterized by Mike Chen. Mike Chen had to have watched that scene in Attack of the Clones 20 times because he really just gets Dex. Even the speech patterns, the way he writes for Dex's speech patterns is really impressive. Dex just imparts his sage wisdom on Obi-Wan. It's really, really cool. The whole scene, and it just builds on that friendship that's kind of been memed into existence now. We got more of Dex's diner in Lego Star Wars, and now we're getting more of it here, and it's really good.
Yeah, I can't wait. I really like the Dex character and the going to a friend trope for help to solve a cool problem.
It's very good. And then we get Dex kind of probes at Obi-Wan about his relationship with Duchess Satine, and kind of why is Mandalore being neutral. Obi-Wan's kind of embarrassed by this. He's very clearly uncomfortable. It's really good. I hope we get more discussion of that relationship in the book. And then the last line of the chapter is the robot or the droid waitress goes, cream and sugar in your coffee or in your calf. And Obi-Wan says, "Oh no, I prefer my calf straight black," which I think is just a hilarious inclusion into the book that they gave Obi-Wan's coffee order, and that he takes his coffee black. How else would Obi-Wan Kenobi take his coffee?
Yeah, that's funny.
There's got to be come on, Luke Skywalker definitely takes his coffee with some cream and sugar or something like that. But Obi-Wan, this serious, no frills kind of guy, absolutely takes his calf black, and I think it's just a really funny inclusion.
You think Corky's going to be in this book?
Oh gosh,
is Corky going to come around?
I don't know. We'll see, man. All those fan theories. I don't support the fan theory. I hope that Corky isn't Obi-Wan's kid, but that's low hanging fruit. If a writer ever wants to do that, come on, a writer could totally take that over though. And we don't know how close he and Satine were. Actually, we do know. He says, had you said the word, I would have left the Jedi Order. These two were in love. It was a passionate love. We have no clue how far they took it. In Master and Apprentice, Qui-Gon's old Padawan before Obi-Wan talks to Obi-Wan about how that the Jedi aren't supposed to love, but that doesn't mean that they're not allowed to, engage in some activities that people in love might engage in. And so we don't know if Obi-Wan did that or not. But I hope that that's not the case, at least.
Yeah, surely. Well, that was a kid's show. They can't be doing that.
Yeah. Well, it was a kid's show, but anything written in the books or after that, that's it may be a little more PG-13. We'll see. But so that's the Brotherhood book. That's the first 5 chapters. I hope that this little kind of hook tidbit rundown of the first 5 chapters makes anyone listening to this run out and go grab it, because it's been great so far. I've loved every minute of it. And I've just been breezing through it. I read those 5 chapters in like an hour. It's a really easy read because the hook is immediate. It's not slow and plodding. They've got you from the get-go. And so you said you're going to listen to it on audiobook, and I hope you let me know how it is to listen to, because it's a good read so far.
Yeah, and to add to that, the Star Wars books, if you're even a slight Star Wars fan, the Star Wars books thrust you into a universe that is this nuance that you don't even get to see on screen in some cases. I'm going to talk about it here later, but we read Bloodlines, we read Last Shot. You can listen to our podcast on that. And just the fun adventures you get to have with your favorite characters are over the top. And so this book would not be a letdown, even just this small 5 chapters in. I know it's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
But every book is like that.
Yeah, it absolutely is. There's so many Star Wars books out there. You've got to read them. They're all good. It has a depth to the universe. We've already talked about how good it is to listen on audiobook because of the themes and the music that it gives. That's the one thing that is you don't get out of reading it, is I bet the music is killer. They've got to be playing Across the Stars during that Padme Anakin date, which I don't want to spoil what the date is, but it is awesome. You're going to love it. As a guy who loves Corvettes, I'll say that you're going to love it.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's a good date. But anyway, we got to keep clipping through the Holonet news segment, because there's some really exciting news that came out 2 days ago. On May 9th, which is Rosario Dawson's birthday, we learned that the Ahsoka series has began production. It started production on May 9th, on her birthday. They announced it with a director's chair that says Ahsoka on the back and Dave Filoni's iconic cowboy hat leaning on the chair. And it's a good shot, and it's really, really exciting that this show's going underway.
Yeah, and this means we're going to get to see Thrawn, and right? I mean, that's what. We don't know what the plot is.
He's totally the big bad, though.
Surely,
yeah, that's exactly what he is. Well, we know for sure because of his mention in Mandalorian.
Yeah, we're getting a live action Thrawn. We're going to see what kind of machinations he's been up to since him and Ezra dashed off.
Certainly a live action Ezra, a confirmed live action Sabine.
Yeah. I'm getting chills.
I know.
Just talking about
it's
it.
Very
I've thought
exciting.
about this several times. Rosario Dawson's depiction of Ashoka is such a good character. Her interactions with Maul, her interactions with Anakin, her by herself, with the Mandalorian. She's not some silly character who nothing wrong happens to. She was persecuted by the Jedi Council.
Yeah, she goes through tons of struggles. I mean, we have so much context with Ahsoka. She's been in 3 TV shows. She's been in multiple pieces of written media. Like, she is a well-fleshed-out character, and her getting her own show is going to be great. It's not going to be the same thing as the Book of Boba Fett. It was clearly a continuation of Mandalorian, not for worse. I think that this was was clearly communicated that at the end of the Mandalorian, they're like, the next thing is the Book of Boba Fett. Like, watch it. Like, it's the Book of Boba Fett is basically Mandalorian 2.5, and that's fine. It's not a problem. But the Ahsoka series is clearly going to be about her. It's going to follow her. But I hope it is almost as much about her as it is Thrawn, because I really want some good Thrawn content.
Yeah, and I hope it wakes Disney up to how much more we need to see of Thrawn. There's books and comic books and cartoons, but if I had it my way, there'd be we got the Mandalorian, we got Boba Fett, we're going to have Ashoka, and let's cap it off with an Infinity War style movie. Kind of maybe like a one-off or a two-part deal, cliffhanger thing like they do of a movie with all these characters coming down to do some cool thing.
So you'd like kind of a crossover universe thing in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. You'd like kind of a big production there.
Yeah. I mean, because think about it. Thrawn, is Ashoka going to be able to do much to him? Probably not. Maybe she's not going to kill him. I don't know. We don't know. He's too much to do with in just a TV show for 1 or 2 seasons.
Yeah,
I think it should all culminate. If you ask me, that's what it's coming around to. They're crossing over Mandalorian into Book of Boba Fett, which we had no idea on. Luke Skywalker's out there touring around somewhere, and please make a movie with all these characters fighting Thrawn somehow. Please do this.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be exciting. The Ahsoka show is going to. I mean, it's got to be multiple seasons. I hope they don't kill Thrawn off in the first season. I don't think they will. It's going to be interesting to see where they go. If they need Luke, if Cal Kestis is still alive, what Ezra's been doing. Like, is Ezra just a new, very powerful Jedi? What's his deal? We have no idea.
Hermit somewhere.
Yeah, hermit somewhere.
Because Ezra's always in tune with animals, and he warped away with those Space Force whales.
Yeah, the Purgils.
So, yeah, there you go. But goodness gracious, I really like the Ezra character. I like how he interacted with the animals. I think it's a really good plot point to see how that develops. Maybe he's a caretaker of these and other Force-sensitive animals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're going to see. It'll be very interesting.
I love speculation about this stuff. I really do. And this Ashoka thing is going to be so much fun.
Well, we're about to get a lot more. Out of Celebration, we're going to get some more announcements for what's coming. We've got a lot more coming down the pipe, I'm sure. So it's going to be exciting. And we're going to get a lot more information here in just a couple weeks. Next piece of news, though, for this week is Shadows of the Sith, the upcoming novel that centers around Luke and Lando, very unlikely pair, an interesting pair to put together. Luke and Lando's adventure, that we get referenced in The Rise of Skywalker. They gave the promo art for the villain, which the villain they name as a Sith. Del Rey calls him a Sith, which I think is a very interesting move. Because is it really a Sith? That definition means something. Kylo Ren was not considered a Sith. Right. And so it's an important designation to put out there. And Del Rey just went out and said it. This is a Sith. So we'll see how much of that tweet holds up to actual lore. We don't know who wrote that. But it's a picture of a female with blue fingers, and she's got a mask on, so we can't see her face. But it's really interesting. It's a really good shot, or it's a really good piece of art. And the references, the author has confirmed that we've seen this villain before. That you don't need to know anything about this villain, that it's totally fine if you don't know who this is at the beginning, but that we've seen this villain before. And I'm very interested in who it's going to be. And I have who I think it's going to be because of the blue fingers. But it's really interesting to see that. I don't know who it could be. I'm most excited for Shadow of the Sith. I'm very excited. I was very excited for Brotherhood. I'm really excited for the other novels coming out, the High Republic stuff. But I'm most excited for Shadow of the Sith because this is a time period that needs to be fleshed out.
Right. And it's always, people love good villains. Sith are always really good villains, at least if they pull them out of a pit, So, gosh, it's really interesting to see what they're going to do with this stuff.
Yeah, it will be. We're gonna see, and we have no idea. But I think like they said, we've seen this person before. With the blue fingers, it's got to be a Chiss or a Pantoran, basically. And so in the Aftermath trilogy, there's a couple chapters that centers around a Pantoran acolyte of the Beyond, which is like this dark side kind of evil like sect or group. And the blue fingers coupled with the like Sith worship and the holding a red lightsaber really makes me think it's this female Pantoran that they mention in Aftermath. I have no idea, but it makes me seem that way. And before this book comes out, I'm probably going to, refamiliarize myself with the Aftermath trilogy, just to see if my hunch was right or not.
Yeah, that'll be super interesting. I need to check that out too.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. So our very last piece of news is another exciting little bit. It is that we have another novel coming out later in the year. I'm pretty excited about it. It is The Princess and the Scoundrel, and so it's about the honeymoon of Princess Leia and Han Solo. We know that they get married immediately after the Battle of Endor on Endor, and so this is about their honeymoon and the adventure that they go on. And the cover art came out today, and it looks phenomenal. I think that this cover looks stupendous. It's a total homage to Legends continuity. It's a total homage to the courtship of Princess Leia, which is the Legends book about them getting married. But the cover looks really good. I want to know what you think about the book and what you think about the cover and all of that.
I studied it earlier today. It really struck me that captured the essence of Han Solo staring at Leia. You can see that there's true love there. It's a piece of art, so you can interpret this right. It looks really, what's the word? Genuine. It's a really genuine looking piece that Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford are standing there looking at each other. The artist spent a lot of time doing this. And so that means that the artist was able to capture this, the story is going to reflect that as well. And also on this cover, they're on the forest moon of Endor with the Ewok village. And then it also looks like they went to Arendelle, to Elsa's castle, where the stormtroopers are pursuing them. So
only you with your toddler daughter would know the name of the kingdom of Frozen.
I'm a nerd, man. I know all these things. So maybe they need to go see their cousin Elsa, and got some
special
ice in their drinks, in their cap, ice cap, and the stormtroopers showed up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like you said, this cover looks really good. It's such a throwback cover. It looks very retro. It looks like the covers of the 80s and the 90s. But I'm really excited about this book, especially to come out this year, because I know you're in the wedding, but I don't know if I've even talked about it on the podcast. But I'm engaged. Me and my fiance are to be married this year, and I'm very excited about it. And so I'm most excited about this book, that this book comes out during the same year that we're getting married. I think that's awesome. I think it's really sweet, and I can't wait to read it. I hope that she reads it too.
It'll be really good. They're such good characters.
Yeah, they are. They're really good characters. It's going to be really interesting. The courtship of Princess Leia was much derided. It was not very well received at the time, but it is now. It's people still like it. It was kind of campy, but this book looks like it's going to take a lot of inspiration, but improve on that piece of literature from Legends.
Yeah, the anti-couple almost.
Yeah, canon continuity, they're very different than they are in the Legends continuity. They in canon continuity, Han and Leia are wholesale different than they are in Legends, and so that's very interesting. And we'll get to see how that progresses. The last little bit is the spaceship behind Han's shoulder on the cover is the Halcyon Legacy, which is the new hotel that Disney just opened up, the new canon hotel that you can stay at. The hotel experience takes place in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. But the point of the Halcyon Legacy is it's a millennia-old cruiser. It's been around through all the galactic conflicts. And so they take their honeymoon, part of it at least, on the Halcyon cruiser. Some people were very upset about this. They're like, oh my goodness, they're using this book as a tie-in novel to the hotel. Because, they've released a tie-in comic book series about the hotel that I haven't read yet. I'm waiting until it's collected on trade paperback probably. But specifically the inclusion rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but it's small on the cover. And this may be indicative, there's other stuff going on the cover too. So this may be indicative that it's going to be a small part of the story. And if that's the case, I think that's a great inclusion. Because, come on, if you're Disney, aren't you going to charge more for the room that Han Solo and Leia stayed in on the Halcyon cruiser?
I'll spend the money. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got to check that out sometime, and I think that I don't worry about the edition as long as they do it right. So anyway, that wraps up our Holonet news segment. So we are going to jump right into our Star Wars moment of the week. And I know, Colin, you have a pretty exciting one that I want to talk about. And so I'll go through mine real quick and we'll get to yours. I had a great moment of the week this week. A couple episodes ago, I talked about how I got to show my friend from Germany, David, A New Hope is his first Star Wars he's ever seen. I got to show him A New Hope. He really enjoyed it. And so we watched back to back Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, you almost have to.
And he loved it. He thought they were great. He really liked Empire Strikes Back, but he loved Return of the Jedi. He said after he saw Return of the Jedi, he totally understood the Star Wars hype. He said, I get it. I want to watch all the other movies. And, since Return of the Jedi is my favorite, I love to hear that. But he really liked it, and he wants to see all of Star Wars now, which is awesome that I could hook somebody in their late 20s who had never seen it, he knew the Vader twist, but didn't know the Luke and Leia twist. The Luke and Leia twist caught him off guard.
That's cool.
In Return of the Jedi. We looked at him before the revelation around Jabba the Hutt's palace. We paused it, and we said, if you're taking bets right now, do you think that Leia ends up with Han or with Luke? And he goes, she definitely ends up with Luke. And it was so hard to contain our laughter. No one laughed. We were able to keep it under our wraps. And he was just...
Don't laugh. Be quiet.
Yeah, his eyes were just wide when it happened, when that revelation hit. It was great. It was awesome to see somebody, experience a Star Wars twist for the first time.
It's like a trip down memory lane or a peek back into the past of how people back in the early 80s and late 70s felt when these movies came out. Think about sitting in there and watching Empire Strikes Back, watching Han Solo being taken away. And you get to see what happens in the next movie with all the different things. It's so cool to get to see a glimpse of what that would be. I'm hoping to do that with my kids. They don't care about it at all yet. So,
yeah, well, I hope that you can too. I can't even fathom having to wait 3 years to see between the two Star Wars movies. The longest I've ever had to wait is a year and a half, or just a year if we count, with the anthologies. So I can't imagine having to wait 3. But anyway, yeah, I want to talk about your moment of the week.
Yeah,
I'm very excited about this. So why don't you let the listeners know?
I've listened to on audiobook the Bloodlines novel. It's Leia. What's the full title? I'm drawing a blank here. I want to make sure I get it right.
It's Star Wars Bloodline. It's just Star Wars Bloodline.
Star Wars Bloodline. There's another book I read called Bloodline. So yeah, Star Wars Bloodline, and on the cover it gives Darth Vader's on the cover, but he's not in the book. But it's all about Leia and her time in the Senate of the New Republic and the trials and tribulations of that. And it's politics mostly. And so if you really liked the prequels, you'll like this book. But that's not even doing it justice. It's got a lot of action in it from Leia's perspective. And she's got her help with her staffers. Han Solo is pretty much a side character, but he still has a prominent role to play in support for her. And
well, he's much better characterized than he was in Last Shot.
Oh, for sure.
Come on.
yeah. No, that's 100% true. But it's her navigating the waters of politics in the New Republic, and it's still fledgling after all this time. It's several years later after Return of the Jedi. Like 18 or something, like just before.
Oh yeah, more than that. It's even more than that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the 20s ish, I think.
Yeah, 22 or something. Somewhere around that.
It's 28. That's what.
28. Okay, yeah, that's even more than I thought. But she's having to. There's so many dynamics to this. One of the other characters that she interacts with a great deal is Ransom Casterfo, who's a really well fleshed out character. That is. They don't just give it to him all you want. It's not some flashback sequence thing. He tells a narrative about how his home planet was ravaged by the Empire. All the resources were stolen, and Darth Vader himself came and personally enforced draconian rules to make sure that the planet was supplying stuff to construct the Death Stars. And so he has his parents were sacrificed to the Empire. Most of his childhood was, and so he has this really unique perspective. I'm skipping. There's too much of this stuff. It's too good. There's two factions in the Senate, centrist and populist. The centrist they want a strong central control of government, and they have their own factions therein. The populists they want to be more individualized and are wary of power, and they even have their two factions. They got anarchists and more individualist type stuff. And so it's these two factions fighting each other, and Ransom Casterfo is a centrist, and he wants the strength of the empire without the corruption. And Leia calls him out for being naive, and he even collects artifacts, which sounds really cool as far late as it is on, because we collect artifacts even today. We don't have the perspective of these characters. She disgusted at him, so it made me reflect on some of the stuff I have sitting in my room. It's like, man, is there somebody if one of these people jumped out of this universe, they're going to be kind of pissed at me for having some of the stuff I have.
Having the Darksaber on your wall.
Yeah. That thing's awash in blood, But as the novel advances, it's a really cool mystery thing. It starts out falling little grains of sand up to a huge Mount Everest type thing that not even the characters are aware of what the full implications are. And being a fan of Star Wars media, you figure out pretty quick what's going on. But regardless, the novel does a fantastic job of not being this ultra fan servicey, doing things that are just tipping the hand too much and giving the reader all the story of everything that happened. You get to figure some stuff out for yourself. You get to see how these characters interact in really tough situations that are really fun to be part of. And it's all about Leia. Another genuine, strong female character that has a long history. And here's another really small part of it, and that she faces some real trials. And it's the beginning of the Resistance, like the very first meeting of the Resistance is in this book. And you get to see why. It's very significant why that was brought about. And the Force is only mentioned a couple of times, but the thing that struck me is the quality of the writing of this book is you don't have to have robes or a lightsaber to use your Force abilities. And I'm not talking about moving stuff around. I'm talking about Leia's Organa's political prowessness and able to observe how people interact and how it affects the whole galaxy. She's able to discern. And it doesn't say it in the book. This is my personal speculation. But I think it's the Force influencing her and how she sees things and how she's able to accomplish what she does in this book.
Yeah, you're right.
It's such a cool concept that isn't discussed much. That's why you listen to this podcast. That's why you join our Discord channel, to have these discussions like this that we love having discussions about. Because this is just something I invented in my brain that me and Carter and whoever else wants to join in, listen to and talk about why things happen the way they do in these books. It's such a fun time, and this is such a fun book. Is there anything else?
Yeah, well, I'm super happy. I'm super happy that you loved it, because it's my favorite canon book so far. I think it's great. Like you said, characterization of Leia. Characterization of Leia is on point. It is amazing characterization. Claudia Gray totally understands this character to a T. Like you said, Leia is this microcosm. Her political prowess, she's a microcosm of her mother's political prowess. She never knew her, but it has to be some inheritance. She's one of the best senators in the known galaxy. She's raised by one of the best senators. She's raised by Bail Organa, and it has to be the Force. She has all of this just amazing microcosm of having these wonderful political abilities. And so she is totally set out as being this great senator, this one of the only revered senators left in the New Republic Senate. The whole book's great. I'm very, very happy that you liked it. And I'm really happy that we have a piece of media that honors Leia's character as much like this. I don't think we have another single piece of media that follows an individual character that honors the character as much as this book honors Leia.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's really hard to come by, and so much today is done with female characters that could be a lot better. And this is just a buildup of something that is from the late 70s that is jumped out of George Lucas's head and doing really great things and continues to do. And we're going to see this other book, Princess and the Scoundrel. That takes place before this. That's going to be really fun. Such great characters, such great interpretation of these characters, a great story. So much fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. After that Star Wars moment of the week, I think that wraps it up for us this week. I'm glad that we got to talk about this. I think we had a lot of good things to cover in this episode, and I'm really excited. We're getting closer to Kenobi, only a few days away, 16 days away from the premiere. It's close.
Yeah, I'm counting it down.
It's going to be really, really good, and so it's soon. And so we'll be bringing you another episode in between then, and then it's going to be rolling right into Kenobi.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
I know where I'll be.
Yeah.
Come check this out.
Glued right to the TV, and then immediately recording this episode. So you guys have our fresh perspective on the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope that you guys join us as the show continues. We're going to be breaking down every single episode week by week. You guys have to join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so with that, I hope that you guys have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week with another episode of Star Wars Station Communication. Please follow us on Instagram at starwars.station. Be sure to follow us on Twitch at twitch.tv/stationmedia. Be sure to follow our YouTube channel, Star Wars Station, and join the Discord. You can find the Discord link in our Instagram bio. And we appreciate you guys listening, and may the Force be with you.